All, Qntkka, I want to say thank you for being a foil. I would not want to simulate or just imagine. Um, okay, it's live. Um, your position. I like the idea of simulating your position after you've told me what it is. Like if I'm writing a story, I could put somebody with your opinions in there. I could represent the other side of the argument. But it comes from talking to you, and I think I both like. I'm an attitude collector. I like finding out how other people think. Um, Truth is stranger than fiction, and I don't mean that as an insult, but it's cooler than fiction. It's better to know, and and certainly if you like ideas that are on the edge uh, of like consensus, um, it's it's good to talk to other people and find out what people actually think. I mean, I until we came on YouTube, I didn't realize young Earth creationism was really a thing or had a cultural backing. So I like attitude collection as a collector, and I also like having a chance of a backboard. And I believe the situation is symmetrical, that you get a backboard where you can, reflect on your own ideas, and maybe you also like collecting other people's opinion. Though I'm not sure about that. You keep commenting like you don't really get my position because it's wrong, so you can't remember it or something. And you've said your position, and if I was listening, I'd agree with you. To me, those are symptoms of not being much of an attitude collector. Still, I'm a foil that gives you a chance uh, to hopefully to make your statement. I would like to um, be consistent that I have my position, but at the same time, I think it's I'm shining light on your position, and to the degree that your position has good points, then that light should be welcome. So it's a symmetrical thing, but you don't have to thank me, but I'm thanking you. Um, I have notes here. I'm going to go through backward from about the last 15 or 20 minutes. Some of the things I say might have been in comments. And one thing I notice you're doing is you make an equivocation between uh, teaching boys not to rape and teaching women not to fantasize. Teaching someone to not have a rape fantasy is different from teaching someone not to rape. And I feel there's a strong distinction there, even though I believe in both of those things. I think if you have a daughter or a son, teaching them not to fantasize about rape, especially if they're boys, because um, getting raped is not a crime. So I think that's why that's especially boys in that case. But I do believe in teaching both of those things, but you can't make an equivalency because basically, among many things, you keep being obstinate about just listening, and not that you would end up agreeing, but just that you would know what I'm saying on this subject. I'm not into restricting people's fantasies, right? So I not only do I want to teach boys not to rape and teach them not to have assault fantasies or braggadocious about assault. Um, that's criminal and violent, so we also prohibit that legislatively. Whereas in terms of fantasy, we just talk to our family and our friends and our lovers and maybe our psychologists about it. So it's a big distinction, even though I think in both of those cases, I think it should be fairly clarifying for you to realize that I'm saying I have the same feeling about, for example, the kind of thing Trump said that I would have if he said, "Yeah, I like stealing money from people. I like conning people." That would not that's a character thing. It's just like, "Oh, but he only said it in private." Yeah, because there's certain things like that people tend not to want to, you know, broadcast. And similarly, if you get the idea that I like treating people like special snowflakes, um, then you're mistaken. But I think you might know that I'm not advocating for special snowflakeness, um, but you keep thinking that characterizes my position somehow. So I don't believe it, but somehow, because of what I do believe, this characterizes my position that social justice is all about treating people like special snowflakes. And no, it's about trying to get equity. And on the other hand, I also object to uh, this special snowflake criticism because people are valuable. You know, people are not trash. People are special. Fingerprints are unique, and every there's a billions and billions of things to do in the universe, even if you're limited to being a human and doing them as a human. And so I don't find it hard to consider every person as having a unique perspective. I have yet to find the second copy of the first person. You know, I found people that are very similar, but what I find is they often think they're similar, like two Christians. In reality, if you get them in, you know, a conversation at the wedding, you find out they actually have differences that they don't necessarily want to acknowledge. So, at the end of your video, you went through all these rules of safety. Yeah, we teach that. We teach that. And people that seem to think that feminists are saying, you should not take care of yourself, that's not true. Feminists teach crime awareness, carry mace, go with the girlfriend. They teach all those things that you were talking about. That's not the issue. And the fact is, though, while it's true you shouldn't walk around Lake Merritt at 10 o'clock at night for your own safety, it's also true that if you do that, you're not the criminal. And when I was young, I knew a kid that did do that, and he ended up getting mugged and pushed into the lake. And he was just out there at 9:30. This was the early 90s. And he didn't know. He was a new convert to the city, and he didn't realize that that was dangerous. What a moron! Whatever. Believe me, you know, he was the one that told me, I didn't know, I found out, you know, can't really do that. What a bummer. Yeah, what a bummer because of the criminals. I imagine a world where you can walk around the lake at night, even in the city. Now, with patriarchy, you were mocking me for as if patriarchy came out of whole cloth and there's no basis in evolution and stuff. I never said any of that. There's a basis in evolution and there's a basis in biology for everything, including my argument that we should overcome some aspects. You know, dueling. There was a basis in evolution of where dueling came from. It's pretty obvious. Other mammals duel. So that doesn't mean that I couldn't have a position back in the 17 or 1800s that we ought to do away with it. Right? So I'm not saying it comes from nothing. It comes from biology. But my rejection of it also comes from biology. Really, everything humans do comes from biology. So what's your point? I don't have to accept something just because there's an evolutionary explanation of how we got here. There's also a lot of historical accidents that explain how we got there. Here. None of that means that I have to accept that we just stay here. Right? And the way I see it is that things don't stay the same. They constantly change. Right? Things are in a constant state of change. And you can either take part in that change or not. Things are going to change. I do not believe letting things just change by historical accident is the way to go. Yeah, there's an evolutionary process there, but it's very slow and not intentional enough for me. We have evolved a part of our brain that is able to be empathetic. We didn't waste the energy for millions of years evolving that part of our brain. It's because it is in human nature to have the potential of being empathetic. And I think we can turn that empathy up and realize that there's a lack of equity in a lot of regards in the society that evolution has brought us to now. And I would like our intellect to take us to the next level rather than the bioevolutionary history that, say, explains cat sex and shark sex, right? I don't feel limited to that. I'm a part of nature, and I'm expanding on what's possible in nature, just like evolution already has done all the groundwork that I need. For example, it's given me empathetic emotions and mirror neurons and whatnot, and the power to have an abstract thought that looks down into forward into history, into future history, in such a way that I can imagine the influence or hoping the influence of things that'll have their effect after I'm even dead. That potential is what I want to use to take part in the evolution from this point on. Okay? So, yet another thing I've told you many times. You keep saying like, well, what if for women? Would you tell women not to? Yes, I would tell women. Women are complicit in the patriarchy. The patriarchy is just one word for the establishment, the folk wisdom, the cultural ideas, the strict father metaphors. There's a lot of words for traditionalism. Okay, when feminists call it patriarchy, the issue there clearly is that it is a hierarchically class system, right? The butcher's wife is not higher in rank than the or rather, the butcher is not of a higher rank than the queen or the duchess, right? But the butcher is in a higher rank than the butcher's wife, and the king is in a higher rank than the duchess. That's the patriarchy, is that at every level of class, there's an internal stratification that empowered men. Okay, so that's why we call it the patriarchy, but it's the same thing as folk wisdom. It's the same thing as, I'm really worried if there's sound here. Let me just check, make sure. Yeah, okay, good. So women can be complicit in that. And related to that is that I have been telling you, I don't think this patriarchy is good for men. I think that the disposable male is a real cultural problem, and a thing and a problem. And it's a part of the patriarchal idea of men. And that's why we see men, or one reason, one explanation, or corollary to seeing men in the most dangerous and fatal jobs. I don't think the solution is to put women in those jobs, though. I think the solution is to make those jobs safer and pay them in accordance with the danger, to the degree that some things are inherently dangerous. And of interest to everybody, by the way, is that police officers, being a police officer is not even in the top 10 most dangerous job. The most dangerous job is logging, so which is something my family did a lot. I never did, but you're insisting that we say women are weak and defenseless. Well, I've heard a lot of girl empowerment language from feminists, so I think you're just full of shit on that. You think what we say implies indirectly that they're weak and defenseless, but I've never asked anybody to join a gang. I don't even think it is a gang. I don't characterize groups the way you do. I don't understand why you understand there's many kinds of feminism among the people that say I'm a feminist for various reasons, and it ought to matter why each person says that, what they mean by feminism when they're claiming that. I've told you that it's not that I'm part of a group. I am a progressive activist and a peace activist, and feminism is if you are cleaning house, right, and one of the things you're cleaning up is a gender inequality against women, a word for that is feminism. I would happily replace gender activism in the place of feminism. But you'd still have, in any given issue, one or the other, gender being subject to injustice, right? So in the room, you're going to clean the toilet separate from the sink. You can't say, hey, don't talk about cleaning toilets. We clean the whole bathroom. Yeah, the part is, it's necessary to know how to clean the toilet in order to clean the whole bathroom. And you have to know how to clean the tub. And under the sink, you have to know how to clean everything to clean the whole thing, right? You have to know how to clean every part of it that's messed up. So, your little diatribe about not reading women, I'm not big on erotic literature. In the past, I've read enough of it, but it's not a really big thing I have probably 20 years ago, but I have read some, out of curiosity. Yeah, women authors. I was curious about that. And I won't deny that there's an awful lot of domination fantasy in that. But it's not a statistical cross-section of women in general who mostly don't read that and mostly are not the writers of it. When you're talking about don't read women, so I just wrote off the top of my head, and if I thought through books, I could come up with a lot more. But these happen to be some of my favorite writers who happen to be women. Ursula K. Le Guin, Olivia Butler, Agatha Christie, Shirley Jackson. Shirley Jackson's fucking awesome. Now, I wanted to add to that, too, another fantastic woman who I've spent a lot of time thinking about. I lived in a house that she had designed, Julia Morgan, designer of San Simeon. So I don't know what you're fucking talking about there. Yes, I do know women, and I have women friends, and one reason I believe that there is a rape culture is every woman I know well enough to talk about life has experienced people doing the kind of thing that Trump described, has experienced the forward behavior. It's just like they're in the bus talking about how you could touch women and get away with it as a celebrity, and then Billy Bush comes out and it's like, let's try that. How about a hug? Well, women sometimes are there going, this feels creepy, and it's because there was a private conversation that, yeah, the add 2 + 2 = creepy, and most women learn how to just whatever and go along with it and not sweat it too much. And should they have to? Do I want to live in a society like that? No, because I'm a guy that if I was in the bus, I would go, creepy, you're a little creepy, Donald. I would say that to a guy. Oh, but then I wouldn't be in the in crowd. Yeah, well, I don't worry about that. That's for all of the sheep to worry about, being in the in crowd. I don't have to contribute through silence to anything. So yeah, you act like we're getting recruits to join our club by negging them and telling them they're worthless, and I'm saying you're living a fantasy. And obviously that's not how I became a feminist, right? That I was told I was a victim. How do male your theory doesn't even apply to me, right? Nobody told me I was a victim and so that I should become a feminist. I believe that 99% of the people in the civilized world have been the victims of the 0.1% of power and control and therefore wealth segment. And so yeah, we've all been victims of that, but the issue is not whether my personal victimhood in America as an engineer and with my livelihood and everything. The issue is, okay, I guess that's fine. Got confused. Okay, something changed. The issue is if you analyze how the world works, there's a big fundament of injustice. And yeah, we clean up some of the injustice with law, and other we do with our sons and daughters and friends, and we give them feedback, so that if a teenager says something, about beating people up and how tough he is because he saw a movie and he thought he would impress his friends, it's important that his friends go, not impressed, try again, so that by the time they're in their 30s, they have an understanding of what really is, if they're doing something to seem cool, they should get feedback on whether other people think it's cool or not. Right? So that's all I'm doing is giving society, feedback on what's not cool. Okay, because as I said, we're taking part in an evolutionary process that's not over. Right? It's just begun, really. The past that's it. It's gone. Don't even worry about it. History starts now. That's how it always is. History's always starting now, and the history we already have is ending now. Not really, right? It's traveling into the future through the present moment, which is where we're transcribing a history into the past. So things based on biology is like, that's not a strong argument. Taking a shit wherever you want, whenever you feel like, that's biologically motivated too, right? So I'm not pro-tradition just because, well, we have tradition, it must come from somewhere. Yeah, it must come from somewhere. So it must be good place it comes from, or it must be justified. Well, It must be that I don't have to spend a lot of time judging people for being the way we are now after history, but I can judge where we want to be in the future and which respects I don't want it to be like now. And I don't really particularly want a future where locker room talk is like that. And I've been in plenty of locker rooms, and I've heard plenty of crude language, and that I have no objection to saying things that other people might not want to hear, or using words that aren't in polite company. But I do have a problem bragging about assault. And it's fine that you don't have a problem with that because you think it's natural, right? You should be able to remember my position and kind of realize why I'm not going to give up. Maybe you want to think of some compromises that we can do. Um, I You're talking on what women want, but you keep saying like women, the group women, they don't want any particular thing except for just kind of mathematically or analytically the sum total of what all the individuals want. And there's various spectrums, right? Just because some women, it would be true that some women have being raped fantasies, that doesn't mean women are that way. I don't have to support rape fantasy erotica because I'm supporting women. No, there's some women that don't like that, that would consider it being supporting them to ban that. And I'm not doing either of those things. Except for that I do support the right of freedom of expression. So I would never ban uh, presenting ideas in a fictional artistic way. And it doesn't have to be good art even, but I mean, to present that, I support that. I would, your thought experiment of, well, if this would it wouldn't stop the rape culture. And I'm a progressive activist. The freedom of expression is one of our goals. I'm not going to use one of our goals as, I'm not going to you violate one of the goals in order to achieve some other thing, especially when it doesn't work like that. The freedom of expression, feminism has allowed women's erotica to become more accepted, not less, and it brings up issues that we can then talk about. But then I am going to talk about them, right? And I don't want to prohibit that because that conversation is how, without having thought police and making it an actual matter of legislation and legality, we can discuss this stuff and we can decide, you know what, I am going to mention to my son, that kind of talk isn't cool because here's the reason it turns out not to be cool. And maybe it's because 1 in 100 guys is going to be a rapist, and if that's all he overhears or he says something like that and everybody just laughs, psychologically, it's just not cool and not necessary any more than saying I beat up old ladies and steal their purses. Aren't I cool? That you would go, no, that's not cool, dude. Right? And then you're helping your friends get feedback on what people really think. Right? Now, if everybody in there agrees we should steal purses and beat up old ladies, then they're all going to say that. But guess what? That's not a universal thing. This kind of criminal hooligan bravado. And most people, probably have had some experiences of trying that, but it could be in middle school, right? And you could get the feedback and realize, geez, I was saying something stupid just to try to be shocking, like, I saw this or that guy, or you're learning. Oh, people are in there. Hey, bit victim. All right, so page 2, counting down. So we have 2 and 1 left. This is where you ask me a series of questions. How long have I been going? Doesn't say. Probably says somewhere. Oh, 23 minutes. Why do women need me so much? I'm not saying they need me so much. My belief is based on what I was saying, that things are changing, evolution's happening anyway, and it's a psychological and cultural evolution as well. And I want to take part in that process consciously, and intentionally. I don't just randomly, whatever happens. We've evolved a part of the brain where it's possible to use intellect to decide where we go into the future, just like we decide where to go live. I can decide over the whole world practically these days, and that's not something we could do in biohistory. I couldn't, move to another continent, but now I could. So I think about where I want to move. I don't just end up someplace. That's the idea. And so I am taking part in rectifying all the injustices. And I've said this before too, but I believe in a polyactivism, or what the feminists call an intersectionalism, where you try not to violate some special case with some other special case or some general rule. But my general rule is, I think the root of all of this is war. War led to slavery. Slavery led to this systematic injustice that we need to remove. Slavery and hierarchical, everybody in their place, caste societies, and I'm on every front. I'm going from the front echelons of where those problems are the biggest. I think peace activism, if we to the degree to which we have less war, we will have just a natural growth in other social justice, because war being the big profit motivator. Crime, rape, these things aren't that profitable. They're not. There's nothing really driving them. They're the result, in my mind, of the psychological damage of thousands of years of slavery in civilization. You say I don't care about women's desires, but you're categorizing with the sweeping generalization all women's desires because some women. So I don't see those as women's desires. An individual woman could be the only woman in the world that wants to write erotic rape fiction, and I support her right to do that. As an individual, philosophy of art, the right of free expression and individuality, right? So that's how I support people's desires. I don't say women like, domination, and therefore I support domination in my culture, so the women that like that can da-da-da. No. Individuals can like that, and they can find other individuals to play that game with. That doesn't mean that socially I have to say, I think domination's healthy. No, because I'm an individual, and my expression is that I think going down that route is not a part of the future that I want to go for. Now, we're right here. I don't blame people. I've known plenty of people, and we're all kinky. And I like war games, Call of Duty or whatever. I tend to like them more abstract, like Quake and whatnot. But I have plenty. I like shooting guns. I don't double judge like a paranoid myself. And I'm not the perfect person of the future, and the person in the future won't be perfect either. But I'm just saying the increment is in that direction. So I get to express my view that rape fantasies is an unhealthy thing for humans. I'll acknowledge biological reasons. We could talk about that, but we could only really talk about it if you stop thinking that the point is for me to agree with you once I understand you. I understand you better than you understand me, I think. I mean, I could tell you a lot of the things you've been telling me, and it's not, I don't have to agree with you to understand you. It's not just you. Everybody seems to have this fucking mental issue. Like, you're not listening, when what they really mean is you don't agree. To find out if I'm listening, you could ask me, well, do you know what I think about women's erotica? Do you know what you think you think most men and women have rape fantasy? I disagree. And even if they did, so babies have fantasies about getting at other kids' candy. Doesn't mean we can't teach them not to do it. As a matter of fact, wouldn't that be a reason that you did have to teach boys not to rape if you want to lower the amount of rape? And by the way, the amount of rape is going down. The amount of all crime is going down. And it's because of the process I'm talking about, where people are going, that's not really that cool. And you shouldn't kick a homeless guy just because he's homeless. Should have some sympathy. We teach empathy, things that are already human potentials that we can also share with each other and open up each other's eyes. So yes, I do care that women as individuals get to express their desires. I don't think it's possible for women as a group to express the woman desires, right? It's groups that I don't respect like that, because the groups always follow the bell curve law, Gaussian. And who's going to speak for the Gaussian? The peak? That's not usually who speaks for a group. Usually it's whoever the group thinks is their best, one of the wings. Their ideals are up there, and then most people aren't at those ideals yet. So who speaks for them? Usually it's somebody out here trying to say, we're perfect. And really, there's the bulk, and really it's a whole spectrum of different people. So hopefully you understand about the erotica question. No, I'm not saying we should burn erotica. Quite the opposite, and that's a separate issue from criticizing bragging about the freedom to do sexual assault. That's different. Writing a story about a rich guy that has the freedom to do sexual assault is different from being a rich guy saying you get to do it. For one, that story would probably, perhaps ironically, be about the opposite. I once had a friend in college, and he discussed with me some disturbing thoughts that he'd had, in that when he saw Clockwork Orange, he found it really titillating. And he was concerned about that. He's like, because I'm not a rapist. But he found that rape scene in there. I didn't. I watched that around 12 or 13. I found it like it was a shocking movie to me, and I've watched that movie many, many times. It's a fantastic movie. It brings up those issues. Now, you might watch a movie like that and find it titillating, but does that mean that Kubrick was trying to turn you into a rapist? No, he might be drawing that out, and most people that aren't rapists and find that's something, food for thought, right? Well, where does that come from? And yeah, then you could tell yourself, well, there's a bioevolutionary stuff, but if you have a little bit of a tendency, you might want to remind yourself the rules of being a boy that doesn't rape more than somebody who's like disgusted by it. I mean, in my case, being more direct, that's something I would have to remind myself of, because it's not my, I've always liked gentle little animals and protecting things, and I don't get why it's not horrifying. But I understand. But that movie's not pro-rape. Quite the opposite. It brings up these issues. Apocalypse Now is not pro-war, right? And to a degree, even a movie that was pro-war, I might criticize if it was propaganda, but let's say it was real art, but it happened to be with a strong opinion. Even that's the same thing. Because it's like when you're ultra critical, I mean, you're raising the issue in this fictional world where we can do thought experiments, right? And without legislating each other's ideas, we can discuss, find where we want to go as individuals with the help of other people having ideas of where they want to go with individuals, or where they think everybody should go. Right, and that is an organic process that I believe we should all take part in. I have faith in it. Now, when you were saying Sarkeesian should go after women's erotica, careful what you ask for, because after she goes after other media, what do you think she would say if she was, say, forced to deal with women authors of say, rape fantasy erotica? She would not like it. Now, I agree, she might be low-watt feminist enough that it would blow a gasket, but somehow I doubt it. Somehow I think she knows there are women that do that. She might think them traitors to their gender. I don't think that, because I don't think the gender is that kind of group. I don't believe in traitors, the concept of traitor, actually. I believe in the concept of betrayal, but not of the obligation to cover for something you don't believe in. But be that as it may, if you actually think Sarkeesian would support rape fiction because women have written it, maybe you're right, but that's not how most actual active feminists have been. That's not how I am. I've said it a million times in this video. I believe in art. I have my main philosophy. My main activism is anti-war, is peace activism, though I'm not a pacifist. And my main philosophy is philosophy of art. Really, what I want is a world where artists would like the world, where they wouldn't have to be so cynical. Discovering the honesty of being an artist and facing things sort of looking at the cold hard truths and looking at yourselves and laughing and sympathy that you learn, it makes you realize how fucked up the world is. So one way of saying what I want to do is I would like to make a world that artists could dig more. Okay, so we're getting down to the band. Okay, first note was you were telling me women like sex too. Really? That's what you think the problem is? So you think that I object to people talking like Trump talked, meaning it's not illegal, but if I was in there, I'd go, that's uncool. You're a creep, right? That, I object to that because I don't realize women like sex too. I'm 48 years old with 2 children and a stepson and my second marriage, but I don't know women like sex too. Don't know where you get that, Qntkka. Oh yeah, this was the part where you said most men and women fantasize about rape. Yeah, but you also said I don't have the studies. Da, 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 da. Yeah, I don't think so. And also, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I don't fantasize about rape. I find rape. It's anathema to my sexuality because my sexuality's hang up is maybe it's narcissistic because I like the feeling of that I'm attractive to the person, not that I'm getting away with it when I'm not. I like. If anything, I would be prone to, but I could never have the time for it. Too much books to read and stuff. But the art of seduction, getting somebody to fall in love with you, that would be what I would be prone to trying to do if I went down a route like that, not rape. So you don't seem to realize that maybe there's more than one kind of person in the world. Maybe some of us are coming from our bonobo genes and others from, those other asshole common chimp genes. So I do read what women write. I do not think that women erotica authors are some sort of statistical sample of women. I think also women erotica is all over the map. And some women erotica does focus on gentleism and being gentle, just to coin a word. And it's a whole spectrum, and it's all allowed through individual expression, and none of it is allowed because women are allowed to say this and men can say that. No, individuals are allowed to say whatever the fuck they want. And then if you want to take the statistic on, let's see what the women are saying. You go out there and the women of that time, you get a statistic. Doesn't mean the women of 50 years are going to be saying the same thing. Could be quite different what they say 50 years from now. So it's sort of just a statistical thing when you want to say what's going on in women's literature, and by which I mean literature written by women, or maybe including literature written about women. What's going on in that? You could go ahead and do, a study, an art criticism study, but you're not thus finding out what all women are like, right? I mean, if there's an era where all women are writing romance novels, it doesn't mean that's all they're into, but that's all they're writing. Well, that's all that's selling. That's all that's there right now by this accident of history. Doesn't mean that's the only kind of fiction all women would write, right? Does it? So the final thing I would say is equal rights and justice in society does not mean putting someone on a pedestal. And you think it does mean that, and that's why you're against it. But this is where you have to understand that you don't get to run the definition of feminism for everybody, especially people that say they are feminists. I could tell you what I mean by that, and it means that I believe in equity. We do not have legal equity in the world, not by any stretch of the imagination. You can beat your wife in many countries, you can't drive in Saudi Arabia and the rest. We arguably have legal equity in the Western modernized world, but we don't have social equity because, for example, people still think it's ordinarily okay to brag about sexual assault crime in a way that it wouldn't be okay to brag about conning people, or only in a criminal society would a guy go around going, yeah, I really fleeced those guys at my university, or I really, criminals might say that to other criminals or people they thought were criminals or whatever, but people that aren't criminals, we aren't required to have that as a part of our culture, but it is a part of the culture. All right, in this culture, these are American locker rooms you're defending. So it really is true that there isn't a social justice. And if women were saying that I just go grab their cock, men don't mind, they all want to have sex, so I just go grab their cock. Same thing. I've had women attracted to me that I wasn't into. Everybody has. People ignore it because they're like, oh, I don't like her, so I'm going to pretend it's not happening. Well, it goes both ways. A woman can't come up and say she wants to do, you could get away with anything when you're a woman. Well, try it. Let's see. I don't think that's okay. I would feel exactly the same way if Hillary Clinton had said, yeah, when you're a famous woman politician, I just go kiss the handsome young man, and I don't think that happens, though. I don't think that's the kind of sex talk that women are having. I think women are talking like the viewer's view. They're talking about, oh, we talk about his hand size, talk about penis size and stuff. Yeah, there's no problem talking about Becky's got great tits. I'd love to motorboat on them. That's like, oh, okay, you might be embarrassed if grandma heard you say that. That's not the same thing as saying without her permission while she wasn't looking. I just go up to her when she's sleeping. That becomes creepy. And I know a lot of guys are very nervous about creepy because we've all been called creeps. It's used in the whole love triangle world. And sometimes you did something a little bit iffy and you're like, well, maybe am I a creep? Or you change your thing or you don't. Or it's not always fair. It's definitely not always fair. Maybe not even most of the time. But some things are creepy. And that's creepy to brag about sexual assault in my book. And I get to have that opinion. All right, so let's see what's going on here. That's been a 41-minute video, and I think there's a couple people in here that I could see what they're saying. Bit Victim and Republic of Sandals was here. Republic of Sandals says, I have to admit it's good to hear a kink critical opinion for once, rather than the pro-violent sex crap we've had to put up with for years now. Bit Victim says, the art of seduction. One person's seducer is another person's pickup artist. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that, and I never felt like spending the time on this kind of thing. I'm just saying that if I was to get all hypersexual, my fantasies don't run towards the being in a position of power and having sex with whoever I want, no matter what they want. I mean, even if I'm the king and someone's throwing themselves at my feet, see, that would be the thing, that they really wanted me, and that becomes art of seduction. And my point was, that can go too far, right? Let's say you do that and you become good at seduction, which I think is something you can learn. You might have needed mentors in the past, and I think pickup artist is a very simplistic, it's an interesting thing. But anyway, there is such a skill, and then, you could be an asshole that way, right? There's a fakeness to it if all you really wanted was to get them to like you, and you liking them is actually secondary. So there's a narcissistic and things like that. And I mean, I think this is why we're not trying to maximize anything in the universe. There is nothing to maximize to get the best possible. Everything needs to be optimized. We want systematic solutions that regulate the level. We're not trying to maximize levels. So the point of that was really because I think that Qntkka thinks that domination is a universal human kink or whatever. And I see that only in the most slightest of ways, that, like if you want to call a hug, keeping someone close. There's a territorialism in sexuality that I think we've got, that is something that we have to deal with. I mean, it's the same reason we're learning how to be less jealous. Or when I was a kid, you go home, you find your wife sleeping with someone, and you kill the guy, and that's a crime of passion. What else were you going to do? I mean, no, that was temporary insanity. I think we're all learning that if you do that, you probably don't want to be with that woman anyway. There's other things you can do besides kill the guy. And social Jews. Hey, Republic. Yeah, the comments are showing, but I noticed about 45 seconds. Plus, I was reading old ones, so and it's about 45 seconds or so between them. So, and I have them on this monitor. If I put them over here, it looks like I'm looking more at the camera. So anyway, that's what I had to say. This was to Qntkka. If I'll watch the comments for a second here, if anybody wants to bring up something, but I'm going to check out. And this is definitely the most convenient way to make videos. It's like quick upload works again, because it never did quite work in the past. So anyway, cheers everybody. I will be out as soon as I go to the right window and click the right button.